Next up, we have Trey Mcbride, the tight end out of Colorado State, who intrigues me, right? We'll just say that. He intrigues me, as a lot of what he did on film was very impressive. And as we read through some of my positives and negatives in terms of my notes, as well as my grade for him, a lot of what he does resembles some really successful tight ends in the league. And I'm curious, if we were able to turn back time, part of me wonders if those tight ends looked like Trey McBride looks in college, or if he's just trying to model his game after those guys, and that's why he looks like how they do now, if that makes any sense at all. We'll touch more on that at the end of the video. But for now, in terms of just what made me give him this second round grade. First and foremost, the first positive I had was good motor while run blocking. Does a good job keeping his feet moving and able to win reps late. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, on contact, like at the point of contact, it felt like Trey McBride was susceptible to give up a little bit of penetration, right? Maybe a half a yard, maybe a yard, just that initial punch. It didn't always seem like he necessarily had the strength behind him to win that rep. But then what you'd see is, as the rep continued to develop, McBride's feet would only get going, and McBride would only be starting to get moving here, and then all of a sudden you realize that this defensive lineman, who initially had half a yard of penetration, he's 2.5 yards downfield. Like, in terms of Trey McBride has now blocked him 3 yards downfield, and it's like, wow, this is pretty interesting here. And he did that a whole lot, where it was initial, maybe absorbing contact more than dishing it out, but then with that motor was kind of able to flip a lot of these reps on their head. And in that regard, I give him a pretty good grade. I give him a 12.75 out of 15 on run blocking. He was more of a conventional tight end in terms of the way he was used in that regard. I just got done filming the Isaiah Likely video out of Coastal Carolina, who, he was used as a run blocker, where they were basically lining him up sometimes as a slot receiver and saying, like, hey, go pick off a safety, go pick off a linebacker. McBride was much more in line with the, 3-point stance next to the tackle, on a vast majority of those opportunities. And in that regard, he was oftentimes tasked with blocking a defensive end, sometimes a linebacker if he was leading through the hole. And I thought he generally did a good job overall. Now, that initial penetration isn't good, right? Don't get that twisted, because that's enough to spook a running back away from a hole, just that initial jolt. But I thought that by and large, through the reps and until the whistle, I thought Trey McBride was generally pretty good. Some of these other notes I wrote: impressive body control along the sidelines in particular. I thought he had very soft hands, had a solid catch radius in terms of an ability to just haul the ball in from seemingly outside his frame with ease. I thought he was physical after the catch, but never really going to pull away. In that regard, I didn't think he was necessarily the fastest or the best athlete, but he was more of a possession type receiver, where he's going to haul in the ball with good consistency, and then more than likely go down rather quickly soon after, right? But it's that safety net that he affords you, rather than the big playability. And I think there is a lot of value for that in the NFL, especially with so many young QBs. Just having a guy that could sit at the first down marker and box out defenders at times, and be a solid, safe target. Maybe not your first read necessarily, but sometimes your second or third that you come back to and hit for a first down. I thought Trey McBride could certainly be that type of guy. One thing that I will note, as I wrote it as a positive, but it was more of a statement than anything. He had a lot of versatility in terms of his alignment. I know I said more as a sort of inline tight end, but Colorado State, they were willing to do anything with him. They were willing to line him up just about anywhere and do just about anything to get him the ball, whether it was putting him out wide one-on-one, especially in the red zone. They were doing that quite a bit. They would toss him some shovel passes at times. They were clearly trying to get Trey McBride the ball, and in that regard, I think that's just a positive in terms of what the staff internally obviously thought of him and his abilities. He was certainly the focal point, I would say, almost of that Colorado State offense. I thought he was rather, just continuing with the positives here, I thought he was efficient in contested catch situations, having good strength to fight and finish through contact. So like I said, kind of that boxing out, and even though you might have a safety or a linebacker on your back hip trying to fight through, almost through you and get to the ball, it felt like he was more often than not unfazed by that contact and was able to fight through it. I gave him a 7 out of 10 in terms of his contested catch ability. And then, one last note that I had just in terms of his hands and consistency, he had no real drops across any of the games I watched, which, I mean, that's 250 plus snaps. And in that regard, I can't really think of many opportunities where, even though they're force feeding him the ball at times, he was hauling them in very often. I gave him a 14.5 out of 15 on hands and consistency, which, I haven't done a whole lot of tight ends over the last 2 years. These haven't been the strongest tight end classes, but I gave him the next highest grade to Kyle Pitts out of that category. I gave Pitts a 14.75. I gave McBride a 14.5. So say what you will in that regard. I thought he was very, very solid. In terms of some negatives, again, none of these are really the worst thing in the world. Some of them are coachable. Some of them I think are more just athletically trait-based that I'm not sure he'll be able to overcome, but we'll cross that road when we get there. First and foremost, I thought he could get stood up and almost forget to engage his hips versus longer defenders. And like I said, a lot of those reps did come on the line of scrimmage against those defensive ends, and it felt like that was sometimes an issue where they would get hands on first, and then it was almost like he didn't necessarily know what to do when, you just got to keep motoring, right? And he was pretty good at that, but I thought that at times, he could kind of get stood up and played off of in that regard while they were stacking and shedding and trying to make a play. I thought another note that I made is he can sometimes struggle creating separation. That was something that, in terms of his route running, I gave him a 15 out of 20 because I think that, for him at least, with route running, generally I look for the nuance in people's routes, right? The ability to, first and foremost, run every route, and then secondly, the nuance in it. I didn't necessarily, I don't want to say there wasn't nuance, but I think with him it comes back to the athleticism that he possesses, not always putting him in the best position to run crisp routes, right? Like, he's not a burner. I give him a 2.75 out of 5 on athleticism, right? So it's not like he's really pulling away. So for him to win off route running alone, he really has to confuse you, right? And I don't think there was necessarily a ton of that. It was more, run of the mill. I'm going to run my route and there's nothing you can do about it. And I appreciate that, right? But in terms of, I had to dock some points there because he wasn't always creating the most separation. And maybe for, as I said, some of those rookie young QBs, that would make them look off of Trey McBride. Whereas at Coastal Carolina, like I said, I just got done doing Isaiah Likely, my apologies. At Colorado State, like I said, they're force-feeding him the ball. Maybe at the next level, that wouldn't be the case, and then he wouldn't get as many targets as I think he maybe could handle. That was the next note I wrote in terms of the athleticism. Quicker than he is fast, but not really top tier in either, I would say, hence the 2.75 out of 5. I thought another thing that I noted was that he could fall off of his blocks when he got a little bit too top heavy in terms of, yes, he's motoring guys, but then he starts to get up on his toes and really lean and kind of lunge into these guys and lean into them, which would be fine. But then when they realize where the ball is and try and detach, sometimes he would kind of fall off of his blocks. It wasn't the biggest of deals. Overall, I gave him an 8.5 out of balance and body control. That's kind of a mix of both in terms of the balance as a run blocker as well as the body control as a receiver. So I thought that was a solid grade. And all in all, his grade was a solid grade, right? I gave him a 76.5, multiply that by the position premium at tight end that I hand out. And as you see, middle of the second round. I don't have a problem with him there. That being said, I did have a question that I wanted to pose to you guys because Trey McBride had a striking resemblance, I would say, to one player in the NFL, and it's absurd. It's absurd to ever expect this out of somebody. I'm not expecting that. As you see, I have him graded in the middle of the second round. But if you watch McBride's film, I'm curious to know if this is what Travis Kelce looked like at Cincinnati when he was drafted in the third round, just for example, or if Trey McBride is just like intensely studying and trying to model his game after modern day Kelsey. Because, man, there were some striking resemblances just in the way he was used all over the field, whether it's out wide, in line, on these shovel passes, feed him the ball as best you can, better against zone coverage than man, right? Finding the soft spots in zones, able to use his body, haul in the ball. Maybe not always the most dynamic after the catch, but physical, tough to tackle, not necessarily the fastest guy in terms of raw speed. There were just a lot of resemblances, which to me was strange, right? Was Colorado State intentfully just putting on Kansas City film and saying like, okay, we're gonna use Trey McBride like that, or like could we actually be looking at a young tight end that could blossom into one of the best guys in football? I don't know, because on my grade scale he came out to a second rounder, and I don't really let emotion get involved in this that much. This is only the second player comparison. It's a play style comparison, not like a ceiling comparison. I'm not expecting him to be a top 10 player in the NFL. I just wanted to pose that to you guys, that question, because it's interesting. I didn't watch Travis Kelce when he was coming out of college. I don't really know what he looked like, but at least akin to modern day, Trey McBride had a ton of similarities. Almost, I mean, I don't want to say to the line, but like in my notes, like you could almost change the name on this report. The only difference is that one does it for the Kansas City Chiefs and against the best athletes in the world, and the other does it for Colorado State versus San Jose State, right? Or San Diego State, or Utah State, or Vanderbilt, or any of the games that I watched him in, right? And in that regard, will it translate? I'm not entirely sure, but I did want to just bring that up and mention that, because I do think there might be some upside. Even though he might not be the most intriguing prospect in terms of the raw athleticism, there's something there with McBride, and I like him. He's my tight end one. On my big board video, if you guys saw it the other day, I had him in the middle of the second round. It's not like I've changed that evaluation at all into and through the draft. I'm recording this Friday morning. I'm thinking he'll be gone tonight, though. So if you're watching and your team got McBride, I'm curious to hear, what are your thoughts on him? Do you already have another solid tight end, or was he drafted as the clear, apparent number one guy? Because I really do think that he could make a good impact on your team in that role. At least that's what he did at Colorado State. We'll just put it there. I really do think there is, though, a high floor and a high ceiling, which is why he is my tight end one. So with that being said, that's all I have for you guys in this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and if you did, you'll do all the like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I want to hear what your thoughts are on him. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I'm mic'd up, now I'm mic'ing out. Peace, guys. I'll see you next video.